Hello, welcome to Now Tell Us. Now, this is where guests come and tell us a story. They come and educate us, they come and inspire us, or even highlight a cause that we could be interested in. And you're also welcome if you have a story to tell, if you have something to say. This is Now Tell Us. So we are inviting you. And we thank each and every one of you who's been watching us and those who continue to share our shows, those who keep on giving us feedback. We really thank you. We remind you that past episodes and future episodes and these episodes can be found at nowtellus.com. That's www.nowtellus.com. And now, today we have a guest with us who is going to be telling us about reprogramming for success. Reprogramming for success. So, welcome to the show, Janet Schmidt. Hi, Janet.
Oh. Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you here because we are interested to hear what you have to tell us about reprogramming for success. But before we go into that, we would like to know who is Janet Elaine Schmidt?
Well, Janet Lane Schmidt grew up in Wyoming and Colorado. Wyoming, in a very small town called Laramie, which is where the University of Wyoming is. And I grew up very economically challenged. Um, and as I went through life, I went through college, I got married, I was always interested, I must add, in energy, in quantum physics, in Reiki, in the laying of hands. At 10 years old, I was doing the laying of hands on horses out in the field. So I was always interested in that, but I went into mainstream. I got married when my son was about 8 years old, and he's 29 today, so it will give people a reference. Um, I went through a really tough divorce, and I ended up with a large sum of money. Now, I was always the child that helped the underserved growing up. And so I thought, well, now I have an opportunity to help the underserved, both nonprofit and individual alike. And so I started giving money away. And in that process, people started hanging on to me for my money. And I had a really hard time saying no. So through that, I found myself in arbitration because my financial advisor, who was with a internationally well-known firm that's well-known today even, made an investment outside the scope of the firm and lost almost all my money. And I'm in arbitration now. And the whole time I'm in arbitration, all I can think about is I'm going to lose this money. I'm going to lose this money because I knew the statistics. And even if you win, you don't get all your money back. And so here I was thinking, I'm going to lose this money. I never once thought I wasn't going to win. I always thought I was going to win. But so we could say the quantum physics or the energy was caught up in, I'm going to lose the money. And sure enough, the financial advisor was disbarred. The firm was fined. The partner was fined. But I only got 10% of my money back. So I started looking at it more because I could understand the energy part since I studied energy and quantum physics. But there was more to this. And so I started looking into my genetic background. I started looking at the program imprinting, the epigenetics. And epigenetics says that we are imprinted or programmed from our ancestors, passed down to our parents, and our parents pass it to us from birth to about 8 years old. After that, it's anything catastrophic that happens to us. It's our friends, society that's going to dictate our beliefs, our thoughts, our behaviors, our traditions. So I started looking into that. And I came from 8 generations of ministers who signed up to be economically challenged, who gave their last cents to the underserved, and who had no money to manage. Now, this is really honorable for them. And that's the life they chose, but it wasn't what I chose. So I had to untangle what I call inherited money consciousness.
Hmm.
Because even with the consciousness, I because of where my family, my ancestors came from, I had this imprint of only a certain amount was a lot of money. If it was over that, you lose it. So an example of that is if you think $50 is a lot of money and you ask for 100, well, most likely you're going to lose the extra 50 and be left with the 50 because that's where your money consciousness is. That's just where
Mm,
you're at. So I
mm,
realized that I had to untangle that. And when I started untangling that, I just started going down a rabbit hole because I had to look at my whole life. I had to look at abandonment issues. I had to look at lack issues, self-esteem issues. I just went all the way down it. And I figured out the 4 techniques that can move out an old belief and bring in the new belief by bringing in your left cortex and your right cortex into a whole brain state. So it's
mm,
like bringing your subconscious and conscious mind into an agreement.
mm.
And I started reprogramming myself, and that's how Reprogram for Success was born.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's a good intro. And going back to where you just began, I know that all over the world, people could define differently what you termed as economically challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on where you came from, what does that entail? What's the extent that you say, even
Oh,
during this?
what is economically challenged? Economically challenged is that the meat that you eat, your parents went out and shot. That's
Uh-huh.
economically challenged. My
Mm-hmm.
parents, my mom actually was a better shot than my father. And it was not uncommon for me to come home and see a deer hanging upside down and my mom, taking care of it. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the meat that we ate or the charity of the congregation. Um, and it wasn't
Oh.
until and it wasn't until I got much older that my parents were more financially probably middle class.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until they moved um, for just 4 years, and when they did that, they were more set. But by that time, I believe I was in high school.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, you say you come out from a line of ministers, and then you
Hmm.
moved into your areas that you've just explained. And what triggered that? Was it did this realization came to you that you said, "Now this is a line that I want to pursue,
Well,
different from my ancestors," or
uh,
was it the limiting um, life that you identified from your ancestors, or what really triggered that?
what triggered it was I had to look at how they handled money. And
Okay.
that's what it really took me down because I had a mother who used to say, even a couple years ago, she said to me, "The Bible, I just want enough. The Bible says, too much is given, much is expected." And I would say to her back, "Yes, and the Bible also says, too much, much more is given, much, much more is expected." And I said, "I'm willing to belly up to the much, much more because I know I can give much, much more."
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a mindset, and it's really how our subconscious and conscious mind decide, because that's going to decide your reality. Quantum physics and epigenetics decide your reality. And so
Okay.
you can change it anytime you want. But
Mm-hmm.
I it has nothing to do necessarily with religion. It has to do with the imprint or the way they saw life and the way they programmed their life and how it was programmed that way for generations.
Mm-hmm. And we hear terms are flying past. We have always heard these terms are being thrown right, left, and center. But some of us need a layman's explanation of the terms. Let's start with quantum physics. What's quantum physics in a layman's language?
Quantum physics says everything's energy.
Mm-hmm.
So Einstein said everything's energy and that's all there is to it. match the frequency with the reality that you wish for, and you can't help but bring it to you. That's not philosophy. That's physics. Now, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to add to that. That the biochemical effects of our brains functioning shows that our cells are affected by our very thoughts, which means your thoughts have energy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, epigenetics, as I said, epigenetics in its broader sense. So if you have any scientists listening out there, we're talking broad sense, says that it's the imprinting, the programming or the imprinting of your ancestors passed down to your parents, and your parents pass it to
Okay.
us from the time that we're born to about 8 years old. Then it's your friends, anything catastrophic, and society that's going to dictate your behaviors, your beliefs, your thoughts, your traditions, everything about you. And so we have to say emotions have energy, behaviors have energy. So quantum physics and epigenetics are entangled.
Mm-hmm. I think you made
So,
it more clear now to someone out there who's listening, who may not be having an idea of what they are. And there's also something that you call a whole brain state. Which is that?
mhm. The whole brain state is when you're able to bring your left cortex and your right cortex into agreement on the
Mm-hmm.
new belief. Because this is the thing, your left cortex is your logical side, and it runs the right side of your body. And your right cortex is your creative side, and it runs the left side of your body. So you're like bringing them into agreement. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like when we have trauma, when you actually go through trauma, the reason why most people have a hard time healing it is because it's held fragmented in our mind, in our brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the left side of you, the logical side, argues with the right side of how to heal it, and that's why there's a hard time healing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a technique, one of the techniques that I do use for trauma, phobias, that sort of thing, is called eye movement integration, or EMI. Some people might know it as EMDR. And what it does is it basically, by just moving my fingers in front of your eyes in certain directions, I'm able to cross your left cortex with your right cortex and bring you into a whole brain state on healing the trauma. And I
Mm.
know it sounds simplistic, and in some ways it is. I basically have my clients have at least a 90% of them have healing in the first session. They feel so much better. And what happens is people may still remember the trauma, but the feelings are disassociated. So it
Mm.
kind of separates. And
Mm.
so once you do that, the healing can start. It's called the inner healer.
Interesting. And now, since you've touched on the technique, maybe we can know about the other three, because you say you have four
Yeah.
techniques used for
Yeah.
reprogramming for success. So, what are the other three? And tell us all about them,
Well,
please.
the first one is neurolinguistic programming. So neuro is about the brain and the state of your mind. Linguistics is how we communicate, both verbally and non-verbally. And then there's the programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most people don't understand that when we communicate, only 7% is our language, is our words. 93% is your body language, is the inflection of your voice, is how your head moves, how your hands move. And I can give people a great example of this. If I asked you to help me, set up something, and you kind of said yes, but you didn't really want to, and your body looks like a deer caught in the headlights, and your eyes are just like, no, you know, you're telling me, your whole body, 93% of you is telling me, no, I don't want to do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
if people really watched how they communicated and how others communicate with them, they could expand their emotional intelligence, exponentially. Now, neurolinguistic programming, I use what's called a timeline. And we all have timelines. If I asked you right now to think of something that happened with you when you were 10, if I asked
Mm-hmm.
everybody listening, think of something that happened with you at 10. Now, think that there's a timeline on either side of you or front and behind. Where does it show up? It's going to show up on either in front or back sides. It's going to show up. So I take you down your timeline to, let's say it's abandonment. I'll take you down your timeline until we see the first spot of where you felt abandonment in your life. And so then we will remove it and put safety, secure, and confidence in its place, and love. And I am loved. And we will put that in its place and move it out. And then what I usually do if I'm using neurolinguistic programming is I'll bring in Psyche at the end. Psyche is something that I always use at the end, and I will touch on that in a minute. But I'll move that out. There are also emotional resilience tools that I give my clients that are from neurolinguistic programming that can reset your emotions literally in 90 seconds. So it's something that if you want to try right now, I can do with you, and I can do with your listeners if they want to do it. It's 90 seconds. But well, no, if you want to try it, I can do it right now, or we can do it at the end. But it resets your emotions in 90 seconds. It's something the samurais used to do prior to going into battle. But I give that to a lot of my executive clients. They love that because they have so much going on in their minds that they need to just kind of bring it down and center. So I'll use that. There's also the mental emotional picture, or the swish method, which I also take my clients through, which is really good if you have a situation that's bothering you. We can turn it from a negative to a positive. And so this is a process that I use. The next technique is called theta healing. And I usually use theta healing with individuals who are used to meditating, because in that situation, it's where the client goes into a light theta state. So they'll bring energy down into their body and they go into a light theta state. And I do the same thing, but then I go into their quantum field, into their energy field, and I go down. We use the timeline again, and I will go down the timeline and we'll clear it out. And I'll even ask them, is it clear now? Can you see it? Because if they're used to meditating, they can see it. And we clear it out together again. And then we put in the new positive self-limitless belief. And then I come back in with Psyche again. Now, I'll move to Psyche because I've talked about it now a couple of times. Psyche was invented by Rob Williams. It has been around for, I think, over 30 years now. It is where you bring the left cortex and the right cortex into a whole brain state on your new belief. It doesn't move out the old belief because it believes that by replacing it, you're replacing it with a limitless belief. So you are replacing the self-limiting belief with the self-enhancing belief. And if anybody knows who Dr. Bruce Lipton is, he wrote The Biology of Belief. It was a bestseller. It was, I think it's 20 years old. He, in the back of the book, attributes the reason why he finished writing it was because of Psyche. And that's why he has great relationships today. He goes further to say that Psyche is the most effective, efficient way to change a self-limiting belief into a self-enhancing belief. And so I always, even though I move out the old belief with the other techniques and even place a new belief in there, I always double clamp it down with Psyche. So I always come behind with the Psyche.
Some deep learning that someone has to go through to understand all those techniques. Yeah. So the question comes in, and because we are talking of reprogramming for success, is your belief or your experience that somebody can be successful in all areas of their life, and how?
Absolutely, I do. I believe you can be successful in every area of your life, but it's going to take you to be the student of your life. It's going to take you to go down the rabbit hole. It's going to take you to look at abandonment issues. That
Okay.
abandonment issues was a really hard one. I actually went through it, and it was really hard for me to recognize. It was really hard for me to understand, and how abandonment issues, even from a child, can affect you in present day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really at times can be painful, but in the end, I mean, why wouldn't you want to take a self-limiting belief and make it self-limitless or self-enhancing?
Yeah, take a limiting belief and make it self-enhancing. That's
Mm-hmm.
good to hear. So it's wonderful. We thank you for sharing all that you've shared with us, and I believe those who are listening and would want to know much more would get to connect with you and learn more. And
That would be fantastic.
how would people find you?
You can find me at janetelaine.schmidt.com.
Okay,
I'm
that's
also on LinkedIn too.
www.janetelainesmith.com. It's there,
Yes.
so you can connect with Elaine and get to know much more of this reprogramming for success using the four techniques that she teaches. So it's such an honor that you chose to be on Now Tell Us. Or those who are listening, we thank you for listening. Those who get to listen after we are through, we also thank you. We ask you to keep on giving us feedback. We appreciate your feedback. Any feedback is welcome here at Now Tell Us. And we are almost coming to the end of this show. But before we go, we would like Janet to leave us with a few words that we should always remember.
Well, there's a couple. One is that success in every area of your life is obtainable and it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is, and it's a quote from someone else, isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me right now. If you said that every time you had a negative thought, I'm telling you, you'd wipe out every single negative thought you ever had.
Hmm. Isn't it wonderful that something good is happening to me right now? Let me imagine that. Hey, you who is watching, who's listening, imagine that. Isn't it good that something is? I mean, the words that you speak, the thoughts that you encourage or entertain in your mind, they affect your
Mhm.
life. I'm in
Mhm.
agreement on that note that what it is that you think, what it is that you confess, what it is that you believe will
Yes.
affect your life every single day and is going to
Mhm.
be determinant of your future. So
Yes.
always engage positive thoughts, always look forward to a better tomorrow, expect a better tomorrow, and it's going to happen in your life.
Mhm.
And those could be my words for today as we come to the end of this show. We thank you yet again, Janet. Thank you very much. And
Thank you for having me.
yes, and that's about it for now. So until next time, go to nowtellus.com and do whatever it is that we talked about. And I've been your host, Anthony Morore. And together with Janet, we are saying bye for now. Bye.